like I've been saying for a while that vibe coding will just be coding. For the longest time, it's been this strange priesthood where you have to go to Stanford, raise venture capital just to get like an app idea out. And I think that's all going away. We're entering a really interesting time because everyone's been given the same bazooka to go solve the problems in their business. I do think that this is maybe the biggest opportunity to rethink how your firm is just structured. Maybe since like the internet.
Hello and welcome to the Airwallex Podcast. I'm Shannon Scott, CPO at Airwallex. Today I'm speaking with Dhruv Amin, co-founder and CEO of Anything, an AI-native vibe coding platform. Dhruv's journey is a fascinating one. He'd built a profitable developer marketplace, Create, which combined AI tools with human developers, but made the difficult decision to shut it down and rebuild entirely around AI, ultimately scaling Anything to a $100 million valuation just 1 month after launching. We're going to talk about what it really means to build in an AI-first world and how we're rethinking how product teams are structured. Welcome, Dhruv.
Thanks for having me, Shannon.
No, it's great to be doing another one of these podcasts. So firstly, tell me about the Anything platform.
Yeah, Anything is the world's best agent for building products without coding. We let regular people go from a prompt or an idea to a fully functional app on the web or on mobile. We're particularly good at mobile apps. You want to get into the App Store. And we include everything you need, from the database to the infrastructure to truly anything that you historically would have needed engineers to actually go build. We've crossed about 2 million users who are building real app businesses on the internet. And long-term, we want to be the Shopify for vibe coding, where people really truly build real software companies on top of us.
I want to talk about your customers in a moment, but first, tell me about the decision to shut down Create, like what that felt like and why it was the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, my co-founder and I come from product. And so we actually set out, and the mission of the company was to give everyone the power of software creation and build products of their own. In 2022, that actually meant that while we did a lot of AI, last mile customization still required a developer in the loop. And so we had a developer marketplace. But it was the ChatGPT moment that kind of gave us the confidence of, wow, LLMs are now finally getting good enough where we can see a world where you might be able to actually fully create a product without developers in the loop. It took a little bit longer than that. It's now 2026, but that made the decision easy to kind of pivot towards where the future was going, and it paid off when we launched Anything.
What year was this when you made the decision?
We decided to pivot in 2023. Yeah.
Okay, so pretty early relative to where we are today.
Yeah.
Did you have high conviction in like what the product set needed to look like?
Yeah, we definitely knew we needed to include all of the infrastructure. So it was very clear to us from even our experience with the developer marketplace is code is only good if it's run. So yeah, you can generate code, but you don't really know if it's working until it's run in some environments. And so that was very clear. Like we need to integrate all of the core foundational infrastructure so that as these LLMs ran in production, that created its own feedback loop on, is this code that is generating any good? That allowed us, a few other leaps came through in LLMs, from reasoning to agents and tool calling, that actually finally made LLMs reliable enough to launch a product like Anything and have it take off explosively. Because most of our customers aren't the type who will ever go and read the code or actually go look at the code. They're truly building it just from an idea straight to production.
How does your product, be set apart from the other platforms in the market? And actually, I use the word platforms then. I think it's really interesting that there's a lot of talk about sort of like AI development and developer tools. And then we also have these platforms, including those that you can sort of like just spin up or actually just work. I'm really curious where your platform sits in this new world of developer tooling.
I think why people love it is the simplicity of the UX. We really are built around a non-technical user and what they know about software engineering. But these people have great ideas. They've got domain expertise from finance to firefighting to real estate, and have always wanted to kind of build an application. And then what makes it possible is actually just the depth of which we've gone on the infrastructure side, from payments to hosting to backends to now agents. When we pivoted to this and said people are going to be building apps by just talking to an AI, In 2023, that sounded crazy. We actually had many investors who were like, really?
Yeah, I think there is a key difference though between like creating software versus actually like deploying and managing that software. And it's interesting to see all of the developers at Airwallex. They're all using Claude Code. They understand how to commit to the code base. They understand how to launch it. And we have all the production environments and staging to production and test, and off we go. And that's fine. But then the finance team thinks, oh, I want to vibe code something as well, right? And so they like build something in Claude Code, and they're like, okay, now how do I share it?
Yeah.
What do I do with it, right? Yeah. Like, how do other users actually access it?
There was a great tweet a couple, I think months ago, time's moving so fast in AI, where someone was like, hey, look, I vibe coded this, here, try it. And it says localhost 3000. And at the time, everyone was laughing because that was like the vibe coder's journey. I mean, that's, I think, the magical thing about platforms like ours is that we make that experience of how do you share it, how do you get it online instant. For a long time, that's actually the pain in software development. I actually wouldn't mind building the thing and getting it run locally. I would just dread actually getting it online, making sure it could scale, making sure that if something went wrong in production, that could be fixed. That's actually, I think, a really rich product surface area for tools like ours to innovate around. And the really exciting thing for me personally is, for the longest time, I used to think about, okay, so someone non-technical has launched an app. You probably know this. Most of the time the app goes down is because there's a database query that was written for a different level of scale, and now the app is really successful. And so that database query no longer performs. And so the app now has a bug that was only discoverable through its runtime behavior. And I always just think I think we're building something that people will be able to maintain. But now in today's world, we just deploy agents to go monitor production for our users' apps. And the beautiful thing about agents is they're 24/7. They're always running. They can always be improving, and they can notice things that even our own customers wouldn't be able to notice. So it really is coming together. I think actually, like I've been saying for a while, that vibe coding will just be coding. And I think you're starting to see all the pieces. And so, yeah, super interesting do you guys have a bunch of people on your finance teams launching tools, or how do you guys let that happen?
We're thinking about, I think there's our production software that our customers use, and we still put a lot into, really thinking very carefully about the design of that product and how we work with customers to understand and make sure we're building the right solution. But more and more, we're using a lot of our replacing third-party products with internal tooling.
Yep.
That has been built by our domain experts, the teams, the finance team, the marketing team, the folks who really understand what they're trying to achieve. Yep. And actually building that software ourselves internally. And so I think this is the difference between developers using Claude Code to build software, and non-technical people using platforms like Anything, who need to understand what it means to be local host versus something that is actually accessible, and need to be able to sort of iterate very quickly on the product. They're not as concerned about sort of all the edge cases of the user experience because it's something built internally. And the user context is the thing that's really driving the product rather than the engineering skill. Yep.
I mean, we see the same thing. People sometimes ask me, like, are these apps built on anything viable? Couldn't someone just go copy their business? I think what that underweights is actually a lot of this domain knowledge. A lot of the people who are building successful businesses on Anything are applying just many years of experience where they know the problem more than in the past a developer would be interested in even developing for. And then the opportunity for us is giving them the same power and tools that, what a developer would do in Claude Code out of box.
So who are your users?
Yeah, I like to say this: regular people, usually who want to be entrepreneurs. They don't always start as entrepreneurs. I think we see a lot of internal tooling at bigger companies. We see a lot of people who start building something for themselves personally. But then very quickly they realize, wait, I can give this to other people. Other people find use in the product. And then they want to get it on the App Store or get it live on the web. And it starts taking on a life of its own.
I'm curious what these people were doing 5 years ago. Were they entrepreneurs using like paying for developers or needing to use sort of like imperfect frameworks, or were they literally kids who just hadn't considered being an entrepreneur or couldn't even like deploy this business?
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of people who are SMB owners in services. That's a big category. So they're running a recruiting agency or another form of marketing agency. And they've always had ideas for like better software to run their workflows or do with their own work quicker, especially often AI powered workflows. I mean, now they can instantiate that as software, where before they may have only satisfied that with labor and hiring more folks. And so that's a huge category of like existing entrepreneurial minded folks who love platforms like ours. And then the second reason I use the Shopify analogy is like 5 years ago, I think they would have started a Shopify store. Like we don't think of starting an e-commerce business as something especially technical these days because Shopify has done such a good job on like the ecosystem around it and every single need you need, and the infra that you can go from a guy with an idea all the way up to a many multi-million-dollar e-commerce business. And I think we have that same opportunity, but for building applications where for the longest time it's been this strange priesthood where you have to go to Stanford, raise venture capital just to get like an app idea out. And I think that's all going away.
Yeah, amazing. Tell me about I know you're a very lean team, very small relative to the sort of customer base that you have. Like, how is your sort of engineering team changing over the last 3 years as these AI platforms come into play?
Yeah, I mean, we are using agents for everything. And what I'd say is that we really had to build a lot of systems internally, but there's just an incredible leverage available by leaning into all of the different AI tools. And I think you need to build your own systems, but in the last like 6 months, I'd just say the transformation of how product development inside of anything on the anything platform has radically changed. And that's been a lot of internal engineering we've had to do. And for a small company, 20 people, we have a huge incentive to doing that. It's a huge productivity gain for us. I'm super curious to see. We're about to open source it, and I'm excited to see if companies like your size that would be interested in using something like it. But it really has rethought like the way that we actually ship software and like what does an engineer do. Even me as a CEO who's not like all day in engineering, what can I actually accomplish? Yeah.
So of your engineers, like the engineers are building the framework that you're planning to open source.
Yeah.
The founders are actually doing the product commits, or like do the engineers, how are they split in terms of like framework versus actually building a product?
Yeah, I mean, it's a mix of both. At 20 people, people move all the time, like fluidly between them, and so they still quote unquote code the old way if something's really hard. What's been really interesting is we're actually starting to leap now to the next frontier, which is even our non-technical roles internally are now shipping PRs to production. And I think to your point of the finance team, there's a lot you have to put around that to make that work well. And not just break everything. But our customer support person, 6 months ago, the process was there'd be a bug in the anything platform. He'd talk to a customer. He now would then ping a Slack channel. The engineering team would look at it. Someone would have to go look through the logs arduously, figure out where the bug was, and then ship it. Now he pings an agent. It's filed to the backlog. Agents go investigate the underlying bug, and it comes back with an analysis of like, here's what we think the bug is, and by the way, I've already shipped the first version of the fix. And the right access, to use a GitHub analogy, that enables in the org, that every single person can move the product development roadmap is just really fascinating and new.
If I'm hearing you correctly, the customer support representative is still doing a relatively similar role. They're still sort of identifying the issue and filing the ticket or sort of filing the bug, but agents are taking it from there all the way into production. Is that correct?
Yeah, but they're not even talking with an agent for first pass. What's going on here? Like, hey, I'm hearing this from a customer. What do you think is going on? And that agent has access to our code base, our production logs. And so that agent is a really useful thought partner for it, or a coworker. And so before, where they might have talked to an engineer and gone back and forth with an engineer, that customer support person is now talking to an agent who does that very first pass of triage and understanding. And then, downstream, assuming they can get to a good problem definition of this seems like something that we should fix, that then kicks off agents to go do the entire software development process. And so the insertion points inside our company of where does a traditional engineer, a PM, even the CEO and founder leap into something and not. It's just changing. We're like really rapidly evolving how it is that we even develop a platform as complex and deep as anything.
Tell me about the design aspect of your product, the customer experience. You've got a lot of different people with different backgrounds sort of now contributing into the code base or effectively contributing.
Yeah.
Like, how does that come together as a delightful user experience?
So I think we try to hire people with really high taste and who can look at something and feel like that's not right. And so we've only really experienced the benefits of everybody shipping off a first version. And even if it's not perfect, I think that gives people so much excitement. If they can even just see and feel what it could be like, then you see people would lend their own particular expertise. And so it is actually a more collaborative product development process. It's just taking place very different than the old, I'll go write a spec, you then go work on it, you then design it, you then engineer it, waterfall that we've kind of had in the past.
Yeah, it's interesting you get a lot of things for free as a 20-person company, right? Yeah. And being able to all sort of come together and sort of iterate on those ideas, as well as have your whole team feel like they're part of that contribution process.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty amazing. For Airwallex, so two orders of magnitude bigger, about 2,000 people.
2,000 people.
And I think what we're seeing is, the design aspect is still such an important phase. You call it gate. Let me try and be more diplomatic and call it a phase of our actually release process. But just being able to actually move straight to software, actually being able to prototype and move straight to staging to really get a much stronger sense of how does it all come together and does this really make sense versus maybe it happening offline or in Figma, or there's just been a very narrow path sort of explaining what this product is going to do. Having that full picture very quickly has just still allowed us to really shorten that phase.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested to see how the sort of judgment element, the scalability of the sort of design thinking will also roll out with agents and evolve as they sort of learn what our product looks like today and what is the sort of natural extension of the features we introduce.
Yeah. Are you talking about engineering design or product design or both?
Yeah, good question. Yeah. Product design. Product design. And I think engineering design, perhaps, you have more insight on this than me, but, we see a lot more in the front end that we can actually sort of get a lot more lift from AI, where I think the architectures are more clearly defined or more consistent across companies and products, whereas there's still a lot of interesting architecture questions in the back end.
Yeah.
But just to scale out, for Airwallex and our being a global financial infrastructure, having hundreds of different connections into different banking systems around the world, just the scalability of using AI to compound on that infrastructure is incredibly valuable.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's exciting times. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves. And, internally, we're just experimenting as fast as we possibly can around what's the tooling that actually makes this all productive. And then quickly trying to turn that into, given our understanding of what makes it possible to build something as complex as anything, how fast can we move that tooling into an easier to use version for our users? Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're accelerating the sort of engineering development cycles. Where is the bottleneck in the business moving to?
I think making anyone care about what you're building is always, I think, a bottleneck. People call this distribution, or just honestly getting in front of the world. You can build something really great, but does anyone even know about it? I do think that the expectations, consumer expectations, are about to radically shift on just how good and how feature complete software can and should be. And I think that's going to put pressure on all sorts of product development teams, because I do think that, that customer is going to end up having more choices than ever. The bar is just rising. And so I think that's still a bottleneck of human attention. You can have tons and tons of agents, but coordinating humans is still extremely difficult, getting people on the same page and aligned around a roadmap. That's still a bottleneck.
Well, that's actually really, really interesting. So let's talk about that one more for a moment, because consumer expectations, I think, I think there's been a dip before it's going to go up again, right?
Yeah.
Right, because there's just been like so many products released to market, so many changes, and I think therefore a bit of an expectation that when things are moving quickly, like there's going to be some things break along the way.
Yep.
And in our space, which is B2B, so much appetite for the CFO or the CEO to try and move more quickly with the technology stack that they use.
Yep.
But they're probably thinking, oh, I've got a few years to figure this out. I'm going to do a sort of drawn out process. They're encouraged to experiment. They need to be making changes and be seen to be making changes with these AI tools. And so they are a lot more exploratory. And I think the sort of expectation comes down.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like how quickly we're going to sort of get out of this and at what point things will stabilize. And coming back to the point earlier around, we're building a lot of our own internal tooling where we used to buy third-party software.
Yep.
It's like, who's going to win here, right? Is the sort of like quite specific third-party software actually like dramatically better than what we can build internally based on the context we have of our own business? So I'm speaking as Airwallex as a customer right now. And I'm really interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, same. I think both will be true. I mean, like, I think what was considered the bar for an internal tool is just like rising. And so I just look at some of the internal tools we build and I'm like, these are like sophisticated actually, like
apps, yeah.
in ways that they never would have been before. And then at the same time, I kind of look at third-party software and if it doesn't have really great API docs that I can give to my agent, or it doesn't have something just kind of annoys me about the workflow, I'm more likely than ever to switch. And so a big thing on my mind in the end state is for an anything customer, I want to make sure that like every single way they want to use anything is available to them. And I think before you had to prioritize more. Now the bottleneck still becomes human attention, making sure all that stuff is good, it all works together. And then I guess the third bottlenecker as a software company I think a lot about is just that it's very clear from like product development that the future is we're all going to be talking to an agent of some type, whether it's anything or OpenClaw or Cloud Code or ChatGPT and their agentic products. And so much of the software experience is about to be mediated through agents. And so, yeah, we're building apps, but how do those apps like play with agents? How does anything as a product play really nicely with agents, which I'm sure you guys are thinking about with Airwallex? And how do you start designing products and experiences that where your user is going to be an agent itself? I don't know if that's a bottleneck. I think that's just more like not yet defined. And so everyone's kind of racing to figure out what this world looks like.
Yeah. So a human like using natural language to communicate with your product, and then separately an agent being the customer who is interacting with your product
and tasked by a human to go use your product.
It's really interesting, and I think we're like exploring it right now. Like, should we build automation features to help a customer like really quickly move their funds from one account into a sort of savings account and then back when they need the money? That's a pretty cool automation feature. Or should I just let somebody else's agent do that because they understand their customer better?
Yeah.
This is a real question, and the answer is I'm going to build both.
Yeah.
But I'm like very interested to see what happens over the next few years.
As software becomes like more free, I think the cool thing is increasingly you can say I'm going to do both. And so maybe you're going to build for that human, you're going to build for that agent, you're going to have the internal tool version for now, and you're going to also try that third-party vendor if it'd be too much of a pain to migrate off. It's going to be really interesting to see where it shakes out. I do think that this is maybe the biggest opportunity to rethink how your firm is just structured. Maybe since like the internet, and we've been around for a few years now, but to me it feels like the biggest shift in our potential processes. And it has to be powered by really, really great tooling to do that, and make that not be unproductive. But I think that's an exciting time.
So who has the advantage here? Obviously, lean teams can change their way of working very quickly. Large enterprise, it takes like much longer for them to turn the ship. However, they do have the sort of resources, the distribution, the ability to like actually use software to also move very quickly. I'm like, who are you seeing as sort of winning or bested advanced in this space? Because I mean, it's also incredibly stressful, I think, for a lot of like entrepreneurial software teams to think about how they can create a product that does actually stand out in the market in this era.
Yeah, no. Who has the advantage? I think the nice thing is this technology is open to everyone so far, for the most part. And so everyone has access to the same models. And so I think I can think of buckets in both, who are moving with incredible velocity and building or buying or using the things they need to actually get productivity out. So I think the advantage will be to people who actually like take these things. I think you speak to both. A small startup maybe is less hamstrung by human alignment, or ideally if it's a well-running startup, should be less hamstrung by needing to coordinate lots and lots of humans, although I think AI will make that easier and easier over time. But the enterprise already has existing customers, lots of distribution. And so it's been fun. I think actually we're entering a really interesting time for both, because everyone's been given the same bazooka to go solve the problems in their business.
I think for small teams, yeah, they'll figure it out, and they're going to be very tech first. I think for those large enterprises, and it's still an open question for me, is that you have very traditional companies that are not technology companies.
Yeah.
They have a lot more to move the ship, but equally, like, agents may actually help make their products and services much more accessible.
I do think there's been a shift where in model capability, and more importantly, like agentic capability, where, the first couple of years I would hear these teams be like, has AI really done that much for me? Yeah, I've got better answers. And it's cool that it can help someone get off the ground, but can it really accomplish real work? And it feels like something has changed in the vibe in the last like 6 months with the release of Opus 4.6 and 5.3 around December, where these tools are now getting to the point where wrapped in the right systems and with the right tooling, that they can actually accomplish very real work. It's not clear to me that everyone will need to go figure this out internally, and that the right answer is everyone should spin up like an internal IT team when everyone rebuilds the exact same stack. I think products are coming for a lot of this stuff. And like, I kind of wish we could just buy something that we've kind of built internally.
There's definitely like an early adopter tax right now, right? Like,
yeah.
You're trying to vibe code, and it's like, oh, it's not quite doing what I wanted to do. Or maybe that's 2025. Now you're like, oh no, this is real. This is working. I'm really glad I invested in this. But I don't necessarily have the frameworks I need to actually roll this out. And then some innovative company like Anything's going to like release an open source framework, and it's like, oh, okay, that's solved for me. And I think that becomes true all the way up the stack of tech complexity, all the way to sort of a non-technical user, is that even if you are sort of reluctant to sort of learn about how to use these tools, they're going to be presented to you in a way that makes it incredibly easy to adopt. It's just a matter of time.
Just a matter of time. Yeah.
So actually, that's probably like a good segue into perhaps my last question is, what are people still underestimating? Like, based on what you've seen, like, so, okay, we're in 2026 now. People have learned a lot in 6 months about like Opus. What are people still underestimating today?
I still just think everything is so skeuomorphic still. It's a little bit like when the iPhone comes out and we have apps that look exactly like the sketchpad, and that's like notes, and we have a camera that looks like an old school camera, and it's because it was new technology. And then it took a couple of years for us to figure out what the truly native mobile apps were, that didn't look like anything before. And I still think we're in the skeuomorphic era, where we've gotten these agents that are very powerful, and our like first thought is, oh, I'm going to load 12 tabs simultaneously, and I'm going to work with each one, and I'm going to babysit each one to completion. There's a huge replacement narrative out there right now, where people think that we're going to end up replacing all sorts of people with AI agents. I'm not saying that personally as a 20-person company. I'm actually seeing that every single person, AI is a productivity revolution. And so as a result, every marginal person who's extremely productive is worth me hiring. There's still some part of the process that needs some human review or human judgment or human taste. But a lot of like, what is a traditional role? How are teams organized? What is the right way to even structure your business to accomplish something for your customer? all of that I think is still just being underestimated.
Yeah, so it's the orchestration of the ways of working with agents, where they sit in the business, how they interact with one another, how they are supervised.
How they interact with humans, what that means for how work gets handed off, as these agents produce more artifacts, and they're making more of the information of what's actually happening in your business. Like, what are the tools you need to like understand that and react to that? I think it's all in flux.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a while to get there as well, because the agents themselves, the individual complexity and sophistication of the agents themselves is evolving so quickly as well, right?
Yeah.
So where you actually need to invest a lot in orchestration and thinking about how it comes together, that is going to need to keep being rewritten as the agents become more capable. So fun times. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah, and no, it reminds me of the chip era. Like, every 6 months you got faster chips, and then that rethinks what even a computer should be. And so I think we're now going through that with agents, where you get a better agent every 6 months, and that reimagines what you should build around those agents.
Awesome. Dhruv, thanks very much for coming in. Great conversation.
Thanks.
That's a wrap on this episode. We hope this conversation gave you practical insights, food for thought, and a clearer view of what's shaping the future of global finance. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the technology, strategy, and people shaping this new era of global finance. We'll catch you next time.